Just one slap. The sound echoed through the opulent halls of the Met Gala, where crystal chandeliers glittered like stars. The crowd stood stunned, champagne flutes frozen midair. The man who delivered the blow was Nathaniel Mercer, arrogant hedge fund titan, a man who believed himself untouchable. The recipient was Eva Hart, his wife, 7 months pregnant. And in the corner of the room, Cassie Vale, his young mistress, smirked triumphantly. Nathaniel thought it was a fleeting outburst, soon to be buried under the flash of cameras and the swell of music. But he didn't know that slap was the secret trigger for Project Aegis, a legal time bomb Eva had hidden in their prenup years ago. Was this slap the spark that would ignite the downfall of an empire? The night wind whipped along the Hudson River, crashing against the massive glass panes of Hudson Yards, turning Manhattan's west side into a mirrored dome reflecting light from the Chelsea piers. From above, Eva Hart's penthouse looked like a crystal palace floating in the sky, a perfect, almost terrifyingly flawless sanctuary. Inside, travertine marble corridors gleamed endlessly under soft lighting. LED strips cast shadows on million-dollar abstract paintings, all acquired at Christie's auctions. The living room sprawled like a hotel lobby, its cream Italian sofas arranged with surgical precision, every detail pristine. The faint scent of tuberose from an extravagant Lenox candle filled the air with warmth, but to Eva, it felt like the stifling perfume of a sanitized prison. She stood by the floor-to-ceiling window, hands resting lightly on her rounded belly. The city lights twinkled below like artificial stars. Far in the distance, the Statue of Liberty glowed against the night, a bitter reminder. Freedom, for Eva, was now as unattainable as the lavish jewels Nathaniel bought to mask the cracks in their marriage. When they first moved in, Eva had been enchanted. Every detail of the apartment sang of the American dream. Walnut wood imported from California, Italian marble custom cut for every corner, a private elevator opening into the living room, and a rooftop pool overlooking the Hudson. She'd thought, this is the pinnacle every woman dreams of. But within a few years, the apartment became a gilded cage. She couldn't come and go freely. Her old friends had faded away, and the late-night legal debates in D.C. were a distant memory. Instead, her days were a curated series of events: galas, charities, cocktail parties, client dinners. Eva's schedule wasn't shaped by her own ambitions but by Nathaniel's guest lists. Nathaniel Mercer, her husband, still dazzled the world. The press called him Wall Street's shark, a man who could turn billion-dollar investments into champagne-soaked celebrations. He was charming, generous, the kind of man who made people believe he was invincible. But behind the penthouse doors, he didn't need the mask. There, Nathaniel didn't yell or outright forbid. He simply adjusted the schedule. Whenever Eva planned to reconnect with college friends, a critical meeting conveniently overlapped. When she offered to assist with his major deals, he'd smile patronizingly and say, "You should rest, darling. This is too heavy for you." Those words were like fine blades. They didn't draw blood, but they sliced away at her confidence, the confidence that had once built her career in Washington, until it lay in tatters. From a sharp Harvard lawyer, she'd been reduced to the perfect wife, a jewel in the Mercer dynasty. She remembered the first time she saw Nathaniel in D.C., striding into a conference room with a smile that could light up the world. He promised her a life she'd only read about in Forbes. He didn't call her a lawyer. He called her a queen in his empire. Back then, Eva believed him. She signed her life over to him, leaving her promising career behind. But now, as Manhattan's lights reflected off her weary face in the glass, Eva barely recognized the woman staring back. Not the hard-working Boston girl, not the lawyer who commanded boardrooms. Just a wife trapped in a shimmering cage. She closed her eyes, feeling a gentle kick from the baby inside her. A pulse of life, a reminder that there was still a part of her Nathaniel couldn't control. Tonight, like so many nights, Nathaniel wasn't home. The clock on the wall ticked heavily. The penthouse was so silent she could hear her own heartbeat. Eva turned from the window, walking down the vast hallway, and realized this silence wasn't just loneliness anymore. It was becoming a call to action. The next morning, sunlight poured through the massive windows of Hudson Yards, turning the penthouse into a chamber of artificial light. Eva sat at the walnut dining table, a steaming cup of tea before her and a stack of documents she hadn't touched in months. Pages filled with financial clauses, investment contracts, and half-finished legal notes, relics of another life, when Eva Hart was one of Washington, D.C.'s most promising young lawyers. In her mind, she saw herself in a glass-walled boardroom at a top-tier law firm, hair neatly tied back, voice steady, eyes unblinking as she faced male partners. Her name, Eva Hart, had once echoed in hallways as the one who could turn a merger with a single question. That was real power, not from a bank account, but from intellect and grit. Born in Boston to a math teacher, father, and a librarian mother, Eva was raised to believe knowledge was her ticket out of limitations. She worked tirelessly, earned a Harvard Law scholarship, and dove into the corporate law world like a young warrior. Every night in D.C., when office buildings dimmed, her room stayed lit. She believed hard work could transform any boundary into opportunity. Then Nathaniel Mercer swept into her life like a summer storm, upending everything. To Eva, Nathaniel wasn't just a wealthy man. He carried the deadly allure of power. Dinners in Soho wine cellars, private weekend flights to the Bahamas, and whispers that you weren't born to slog through contracts, you were born to rule an empire. Those words stopped her. For the first time, she wondered, maybe he was right. Maybe success wasn't confined to D.C. boardrooms but lay in grander arenas where flashbulbs popped, where billionaires and politicians shook hands. So she left her career behind. It was like signing an invisible contract, trading love, luxury, and the promise of a queenly life for her ambitions. At first, Eva believed she'd chosen wisely. She stood beside Nathaniel at lavish parties, graced magazine covers, and was praised as Wall Street's perfect wife. Good, but perfection came at a cost. Year by year, pieces of the real Eva vanished. Old friends called less, then stopped. Colleagues no longer emailed. Articles that once hailed her as a rising legal star were drowned out by ones calling her Mrs. Mercer. In crowds, Eva felt invisible. People noticed her dress, the heavy diamond ring on her finger, but no one remembered the mind that once silenced boardrooms. Pregnancy made her reflect more. At first, she thought the baby would be a lifeline. Nathaniel seemed softer, more attentive, hiring the best doctors, turning the nursery into a miniature palace. She thought maybe a child would make him value family. But that illusion shattered fast. Late nights, the scent of unfamiliar perfume on his suit jackets, his evasive glances when questioned. His phone stayed face down, locked with a complex password. And then, at extravagant Soho dinners, whispers began to surface. The name Cassie Vale reached her ears more than once. A young Instagram model, openly ambitious, with millions of followers and eyes always fixed on the spotlight. Eva knew this game. As a lawyer, she'd read thousands of contracts, countless pages of fine print, and understood that everything had hidden clauses. Her marriage was no exception. The price of the perfection Nathaniel painted was isolation and control. And now, with Cassie's arrival, the cracks were widening. She felt a sharp kick in her belly, a signal stronger than any whisper. The unborn child reminded her that this wasn't just about her anymore. It was about the future, about whether her child would grow up under the shadow of a father who treated love like a power play. Eva stood and walked to the large mirror in the living room. The woman staring back wore soft silk, her face elegant but tired. Beneath the exhaustion, something else was rising. Clarity. No longer the Harvard Eva, nor the gala-attending Eva Mercer. This was a new Eva, a woman realizing that silence equaled extinction. The Manhattan sky that night was a heavy gray, clouds drifting low as if to swallow the horizon. Eva sat on the couch, laptop open, her gaze lost in the darkness. On the screen, unfinished files still bore her name as author, a bitter reminder that she'd once had power, a voice. Now, it all seemed locked away in Hudson Yard's glass cage. But memories weren't so easily confined. They came back like a slow-motion reel, pulling her to years ago, when marriage was still a fresh concept, and she was still Eva Hart, the sharp lawyer no one could manipulate. Back then, on a chilly afternoon in Philadelphia, Eva sat across from Rowan Hale, a retired judge who'd mentored her at Harvard. His deep, weathered eyes seemed to have seen every fracture of high-society marriages. "Eva," he said, voice gravelly but firm, Men like Nathaniel don't build families. They build fortresses. And you must decide, do you want to be the queen of that fortress, or do you want an escape route? Eva remembered laughing lightly, confident that love could defy any prophecy. But Rowan didn't smile. He leaned forward, placing a thick folder on the oak table. The cover read, Prenuptial Draft Aegis Clause. Read it, he said. In those tiny lines of text, Eva saw what lawyers called a kill switch, a hidden trigger. A sophisticated clause buried in the prenup stated that if physical violence or public acts damaging the wife's honor occurred, control of all Mercer Capital holding companies would immediately transfer to an independent trust called Aegis Trust. The primary beneficiary, Eva Hart and any children she bore. Rowan explained, with chilling deliberation. He'll never read it closely. With his arrogance, Nathaniel will see this as a joke. But for you, Eva, it's a shield. When the time comes, you'll only need one signal, and his empire will no longer be his. Eva hesitated then. She thought of love, trust, promises, but Rowan's hand tapped the table, each tap like a gavel in a courtroom. Love doesn't rule out defense, he said, especially when you're entering the castle of a man who thinks he's untouchable. That memory was as vivid as yesterday. Eva recalled the moment Nathaniel signed the prenup, sitting in a plush midtown law office. He laughed, teasing, "You really are a Harvard lawyer, leaving no stone unturned, huh?" Then he signed with a flourish, as if his signature were a crown he could impose on the world. He had no idea that signature had become the dagger Eva hid up her sleeve. From that day, she didn't think much about the Aegis Clause. Love, trips, Manhattan's glitz dulled her legal instincts. But now, in the cold penthouse, the clause rose like a specter, a tool waiting to be activated. She stood and walked to the safe in the study. Beneath Mercer Capital's financial papers was the prenup copy. Her fingers traced the fine print, pausing at Aegis Clause trust activation upon breach. Her heart beat faster, as if the child inside sensed the weight of those words. Eva knew this clause wasn't just her shield. It was a legacy for her unborn child, a key to escape the castle, a ticket to freedom, but also a blade that could sever their fragile marriage forever. She folded the document, locked it away, and returned to the window. Manhattan's neon lights glittered below. The streets teemed with people, each carrying their secrets. But only Eva knew she held the secret that could topple an empire. A phone chime shattered the silence. A text from an encrypted number. New info. Want to see? It was May Park, private investigator. Eva took a deep breath. Evidence of Nathaniel's betrayal was mounting, and if he crossed the final line, Project Aegis would be more than ink on paper. New York glowed like a giant lighthouse as the Met Gala began. On Fifth Avenue, a line of limousines stretched like a luxurious train, each door opening to reveal a living statue. Hollywood stars in ball gowns, politicians in tailored tuxedos, and financial titans cloaked in invincibility. Reporters jostled, flashbulbs popped like lightning in an endless storm. Among them, Nathaniel Mercer shone like a king from legend. His black Tom Ford suit hugged his frame, satin tie glinting under the cameras. Every handshake, smile, and pat on the back was met with awe. Mercer wasn't just wealthy. He was the emblem of 21st century Wall Street power, a man for whom every door opened with a nod. Beside him, Eva Hart wore a midnight blue satin gown, accentuating her 7-month pregnant belly. The diamond jewelry at her throat felt like cold chains, a reminder of the gilded cage she was trapped in. Her smile was a perfect mask, but her eyes burned with a quiet fire. The air in the Metropolitan Museum's Grand Hall was thick, almost suffocating. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead. A jazz band played smoothly to drown out real conversations. Guests laughed, clinked glasses, and hid daggers behind polite smiles. Eva moved beside Nathaniel like a shadow, nodding silently to other women, their smiles a mix of pity and envy. Some whispered about Mercer's conquests. Others eyed her pregnant belly as if it were a trophy earned through endurance. Then, the grand doors parted. Cassie Vale entered. The room seemed to tilt around her presence. Her red satin gown clung tightly, slit daringly high, her skin glowing under the flashbulbs. She didn't hide or shrink. Cassie's entrance was a public declaration. "I'm here. I'm the challenger. Eyes turned, whispers rippled through the crowd. Eva's heart tightened, but she stayed rooted. Her hand rested on her belly, shielding her child from the humiliation to come. Nathaniel, mid-conversation with a senator, paused. His eyes flickered with excitement. He excused himself politely and strode to the bar where Cassie stood, her smile a bold challenge. Eva remained in the center of the room, watching silently. The whispers enveloped her. She knew this was coming, but the public slight still stung. An hour later, when Nathaniel was invited on stage to accept the Philanthropist of the Year award, Eva stood beside him, listening as he spoke with false humility about family, legacy, dedication. He mentioned, "My beloved Eva," as the keeper of the Mercer lineage. The hall applauded, but Eva saw his eyes scan the crowd, landing on Cassie, and a subtle nod passed between them. A secret signal, a shared victorious smile, gone in a second. To the audience, Nathaniel was a beacon of generosity. To Eva, he was a blatant traitor. After his speech, Nathaniel pulled Eva to a hallway leading to the rooftop. Cassie was already there, waiting as if ready to join him on stage. The air grew heavy. Eva spoke, her voice sharp but trembling with suppressed rage. "You're parading your mistress in front of the entire city?" Nathaniel's smile vanished. He hated being challenged, especially by the woman he thought he'd tamed. In a fleeting moment, the light in his eyes turned to darkness. And then, the slap rang out. Not a light tap, but a deliberate strike, snapping Eva's head to the side, her cheek burning. Her hands instinctively clutched her belly. The world fell silent. The distant jazz faded. The whispers stopped. Only the echo of the blow lingered. Cassie stood frozen. Her triumphant smirk turned to a flash of fear. This wasn't the spectacle she'd wanted splashed across tabloids. Eva slowly turned back. Her eyes, instead of brimming with tears, were empty and cold. In that moment, she was no longer the caged woman. She was the one holding the key. Her left hand subtly twisted her ruby ring. A discreet signal, long prepared. An invisible code sent in an instant. Nathaniel thought she'd crumble. Instead, Eva stood tall, regal, and walked out of the hallway. The crowd parted like the Red Sea as she passed, her steps heavy but steady. She didn't look back. Behind her, Nathaniel roared in fury, "You're not going anywhere!" But his shout was lost, unanswered. Eva left the museum, stepping into New York's frigid night. Neon lights from Times Square flickered in the distance. In the darkness, she knew the signal had been sent. Project Aegis had been ignited. The wind lashed against the windows of the Whitby Hotel on 56th Street. In a discreet suite, Eva Hart sat before 3 large screens. The blue glow illuminated her face, turning her cold eyes into shards of ice. Beside her, Rowan Hale, the retired judge and silent mentor, stood with arms crossed, watching. Behind them, 4 cybersecurity experts hunched over laptops, fingers flying like a symphony on keyboards. The moment the ruby ring turned in the museum hallway, an encrypted signal had gone out. Now, the silent orchestra began to play. In London, dawn was just breaking. In a law office near Blackfriars Bridge, a team of international lawyers flipped on lights and urgently filed stacks of documents into the European Corporate Registry. A notarized deed confirmed ownership of Mercer Europe transferred to Aegis Trust. Nathaniel's signature from years ago had become the hook yanking his European assets out of his grasp. In the Cayman Islands, a financial advisor was roused at 3 a.m. He opened a secure email with clear instructions. Activate Clause 17, transfer liquidity to Aegis. He typed the code. Within seconds, billions in cash and securities flowed from Mercer accounts into an irrevocable trust. In New York, a Soho loft cybersecurity office hummed like a command center. Servers roared. Engineers systematically changed passwords. Corporate banks, investment wallets, trading platforms. Nathaniel's recovery email was rerouted to an encrypted address controlled by Eva. In 20 minutes, Mercer, the man who boasted no system could contain him, lost access to his digital empire. At Hudson Yards, the penthouse glowed, but its AI system received new commands. Electronic locks changed ownership. All keycards bearing Nathaniel Mercer were deactivated. The garage housing his Rolls-Royce and Ferrari fleet flashed red as remote systems locked. The private elevator stopped, its screen displaying a cold message. Access denied. In the Whitby suite, Eva watched notifications flood the screens. Transfer complete. Ownership update filed. Authentication reset. Each green line was a precise cut into the Mercer Empire's body. She didn't breathe heavily or tremble, only absolute calm, like sitting in a courtroom awaiting her turn to argue. The baby kicked softly. Eva placed a hand on her belly, a faint, cold smile on her lips. This wasn't just for her. It was for the future. In a glitzy Times Square bar, Nathaniel raised a champagne flute with Cassie, basking in his public triumph. He was oblivious to the screens miles away rewriting his history. His smile gleamed under neon lights, confident the city was still his. But the hourglass had been flipped. By 5:30 a.m., as dawn's first light touched Central Park South's rooftops, the network was complete. Mercer Capital, once a financial fortress spanning Europe, the Caymans, and Delaware, no longer bore Nathaniel Mercer's name. Every escape route was sealed. Eva nodded slightly. The screen displayed the Aegis Trust dashboard. Assets, portfolios, properties all now hers. Rowan Hale placed a hand on her shoulder, a light but firm touch. He said nothing, but his eyes shone with pride. Eva took a deep breath, looking out the window. The city was waking. Streetlights dimmed. Morning joggers appeared around Central Park. Manhattan's heart beat on, unaware that one of its kings had been toppled in a single night. She whispered, almost to herself, "The game has changed." Meanwhile, at Hudson Yards, the smart system finished updating. All traces of the former owner were erased. Nathaniel would return in a few hours, open the door as usual, and find it no longer welcomed him. Morning light spilled through Hudson Yard's massive windows, flooding the penthouse with a staged dawn. Nathaniel Mercer lay on the sprawling bed, head heavy from a night of champagne and whiskey. The lavish room around him was eerily silent. He reached for his phone on the nightstand, a Wall Street Titan's morning ritual, check markets, news, emails from global directors. But the screen was black, no signal. He tried Wi-Fi, and a cold message appeared. Access denied. His heart raced. He shook the phone, as if a glitch could be bullied into submission. Nothing. He leapt up, strode to the living room, and barked at the smart system. "Alexa, play the financial news." No response. The wall screen stayed dark, the touch panel black. A bead of sweat rolled down his temple. The multi-million-dollar apartment, once a high-tech starship, now felt like a tomb. He rushed to the kitchen, pressed the espresso machine's button. Silence. No familiar hum, no coffee aroma. Nathaniel's throat tightened. He hurried to the private elevator, jabbing the button for the lobby. No light. The doors stayed shut like a cold wall. He pressed frantically, fingers bruising, but the system ignored him. He pounded the door, the sound echoing in the vast space. The entire apartment was a prison box. The man who once ruled billions was trapped in his own castle. In a panic, Nathaniel grabbed the landline, a relic he rarely used. Surprisingly, it worked. He called the building manager. A detached male voice answered, "Hello, Mr. Mercer. Or should I say former owner. Records updated this morning. This apartment belongs to Aegis Trust, per instructions from Hale Chambers LLP." The voice was calm, as if announcing a routine tenant change. Nathaniel's ears rang. Hale Chambers. Rowan Hale. The name stabbed his heart. The old man he'd once dismissed was now the signature dragging him to ruin. He screamed into the phone, but the line went dead. Trembling, Nathaniel grabbed a crumpled suit jacket and ran to the door. The lock had changed. The handle wouldn't budge. He resorted to the emergency stairwell, racing down dozens of floors. Sweat soaked his shirt, his dress shoes pounding heavily. The man who once stepped from limousines now stumbled through a dim hallway like a fugitive. At street level, he burst onto the sidewalk, hailing a taxi. For the first time in years, Nathaniel Mercer wasn't the master of everything. He was a disheveled man on a Manhattan curb. He called his trusted banker at Sterling Chase. The voice on the other end was tense, as if even his golf buddy couldn't believe it. "Your accounts are at zero, Nathaniel. Per the prenup, everything's been transferred to a trust. Irreversible. Your signature." Nathaniel roared, gripping the phone, but the line cut to a cold beep. He tried logging into his trading platform. The laptop screen read, "Password changed recovery. Email. aegistrust@encrypted.com. He rushed to the safe in the bedroom, punched in the code. Wrong. Again. Wrong. The screen flashed. Permanently locked. He screamed, slamming his fist against cold steel, pain shooting through his bones. He called his driver, but the man didn't answer. In the garage, he tried the Rolls-Royce. The remote system wouldn't activate. The Ferrari was dead too. His entire fleet was immobilized. The man who owned a car collection was stranded on cold concrete. Back on the street, he boarded the subway. The humiliation seared. Nathaniel Mercer, who once wielded billions, now squeezed into a stifling train car with hundreds of workers, his suit wrinkled, eyes hollow. No one recognized him. No one cared. One name echoed in his mind. Eva. The woman he thought was a mere ornament had become his most dangerous adversary. Nathaniel gritted his teeth, clutching the subway seat, rage boiling. He didn't believe this was the end. He'd find her. He'd take it all back. But out there, on Times Square's LED billboards, a headline flashed. Aegis Trust takes over Mercer Capital. Beneficiary, Eva Hart, and unborn daughter. The city knew before he did. Nathaniel stood frozen, heart pounding. Dawn had come, and with it, his throne had crumbled. Late afternoon sunlight bathed 56th Street in golden hues, coating the Whitby Hotel in warm honey tones. In the high-floor suite, Eva Hart stood by the window, silk curtains swaying in the air-conditioned breeze. The city below buzzed, cars honking, Central Park whispering like a green sea. She wore a simple gray cashmere dress, no longer weighed by Mercer diamonds or constricted by gala satin. The bruise on her cheek from the Met Gala slap was fading, no longer a mark of shame but a badge of rebirth. Rowan Hale sat in a leather armchair, watching her like a father witnessing his daughter's defining moment. On the table, thick folders were neatly bound, red seals stark like final cuts on hide. The room was quiet, the city outside a mere backdrop to the looming confrontation. 3 heavy knocks sounded at the door. Rowan glanced at Eva. She nodded. The door opened. Nathaniel Mercer appeared, no longer polished. His suit was wrinkled, tie loose, hair matted with sweat and anger. His face flushed, eyes blazing. This was no longer the Wall Street king stepping from a limousine, but a defeated man stumbling toward redemption. He entered, the door slamming shut behind him, the sound like a gunshot signaling the start of a trial without a jury. Nathaniel growled, voice hoarse with exhaustion. End it. This farce stops now. Shut down Aegis Trust. Give it back to me. Eva didn't turn immediately. She gazed at the city's lights flickering to life. When she spoke, her tone was icy, calm to the point of cruelty. It's not a farce, Nathaniel. It's reality. Your empire is gone. Legally transferred. Half to a trust for our daughter, the other half to the Hart Hale Foundation. Every document is signed, notarized, filed. You know better than anyone, it's irreversible. He froze, unable to believe his ears. Staggering to the table, he grabbed a folder, flipping it open. Pages of dense text, numbers, signatures, and unassailable legal seals stared back. Each page was a blade, stripping away his identity. Nathaniel's breathing grew ragged, his red eyes lifting to Eva. You can't do this to me. I'm Mercer. Eva turned, cutting him off with a gaze sharp as steel. You were Mercer. Not anymore. Now you're just a name. Rowan Hale stood, stepping forward, his hand resting lightly on Nathaniel's shoulder. The weight of a judge who'd sentenced countless powerful men seemed to crush the last of Nathaniel's arrogance. His voice was slow, resolute. The divorce filing will be submitted in a few hours. Grounds: public violence, irreconcilable differences. Eva isn't asking for alimony. She doesn't need it. But her legacy, and her child's, will never again be touched by your greed or pride. Nathaniel trembled, dropping the folder, papers scattering like ashes. He stammered, voice breaking. I just need one chance. Eva, please. But Eva was unmoved. Her eyes held no trace of old love, only iron resolve. She stepped closer, voice low, deliberate. You had every chance. You had me, our marriage, our family. You chose betrayal. And you slapped a pregnant wife in front of the world. That wasn't just humiliation, it was your death sentence. You activated Aegis, not me. You. The room fell silent. Outside, the city roared, but within these walls, the quiet was thick as dust settling on a fallen kingdom. Rowan moved to the door, opening it. He placed a hand on Nathaniel's shoulder, guiding him out like a guard escorting a prisoner off stage. As Nathaniel stumbled past, the old man said softly, but with resonance, "Your performance is over, Mercer." The door closed. Eva stood still, one hand on her belly, feeling a gentle kick like a response from her unborn child. The wind outside stirred, carrying the hum of traffic, a prelude to a new chapter. On the table, the remaining folders sat neatly, ready to be sent. Everything was settled. A week after the Whitby confrontation, New York felt different to Eva Hart. Golden autumn sun spilled across Central Park's streets, leaves turning and drifting like fragments of memory. The city hustled on, but for Eva, every step carried new weight. She was no longer Mrs. Mercer, caged in glass, but the holder of a vast trust, Aegis Trust. Assets that once fueled Nathaniel's arrogance now rested in her hands, not just to protect her unborn child, but to redefine legacy. In the old Brooklyn brownstone she chose as her new headquarters, morning light streamed through arched windows, warming the rough red brick walls. It lacked Hudson Yard's glamour or cold steel, but it breathed with new beginnings. On a long oak table, an organizational chart lay spread, Hart Hale Foundation. Beside it, a draft charter outlined its mission: free legal aid for abused women, safe shelters, reintegration opportunities. Rowan Hale sat across from Eva, his aged eyes glowing with rare pride. He looked at the charter like a seed he'd planted now sprouting into a forest. The press didn't miss a beat. On the New York Times' front page, Eva's image leaving the Whitby with a bruise on her cheek and defiant eyes became iconic. Headlines piled up. From Glass Cage to Queen, Eva Hart, and the historic coup. CNN aired a special. The Fall of Mercer Capital, when a woman used the law to reclaim justice. Late-night talk shows buzzed, turning Eva's story into a social narrative. Where's the line between revenge and justice? Eva watched quietly, refusing to be swept into the dazzle of glory. For her, victory wasn't in headlines or public curiosity. It was in every moment she placed a hand on her belly, feeling her child's kick-proof the future wouldn't be caged as she had been. At the foundation's opening, the brownstone's main hall glowed with light. No crystal chandeliers, no red carpets, just wooden chairs, a small podium, and rows of women with eyes bearing mental scars. Eva stepped up, her voice resonant yet gentle. From the ashes of an arrogant empire, we build a fortress of hope. This foundation isn't about me. It's about women silenced, children deserving safety, and new paths the law can open. Applause rose, not loud but sincere, like the collective heartbeat of a community finding its voice. In the weeks that followed, the foundation hummed with activity. First cases arrived, women evicted at midnight, children witnessing violence, families stripped bare by financial control. Each story mirrored Eva, reminding her that Project Aegis didn't just save her, it could save a generation. She joined every meeting, signed every grant, even spoke directly with victims, showing them the woman behind the headlines had walked their path. Rowan Hale, now a fatherly figure in the foundation, helped design legal programs. He said, "We're not just pulling women from darkness, we must bring them into light, give them tools to stand tall." Eva nodded. Her personal pain had transformed into purpose. But even in light, shadows lurked. Tabloids showed Nathaniel Mercer staggering, suit crumpled, face gaunt, living in a shabby Queens rental. The man who owned Rolls-Royces now rode the subway, unable to afford a decent lawyer. The public saw him as a cautionary tale, arrogance paid with ruin. But Eva knew Nathaniel never accepted defeat. Behind the burning eyes in paparazzi photos, she saw a fire still alive. In the evening, as neon lights bathed the city, Eva sat alone in her new office, looking toward the Brooklyn Bridge. Her daughter kicked strongly. She whispered, "We're building a different world." But deep inside, a question lingered. Would Nathaniel surrender, or would his rage become something even darker? Nathaniel Mercer sat alone in his dilapidated Queens apartment, where peeling paint and creaking pipes groaned through the night. The cramped, moldy room felt like an abandoned storage unit. The man who once commanded an empire stared at a flickering laptop screen, its dim glow etching his gaunt face. His bloodshot eyes, shadowed with exhaustion, glared at the world he'd lost. 8 months ago, he stepped from a limousine, flashbulbs swarming, Cassie veil clinging to his arm as proof of his allure. Now, he sat in a torn suit, tie crumpled, wallet holding a few crumpled bills. His accounts were frozen, his cars locked, his Hamptons villa, Miami condo, and Hudson Yards penthouse mere memories. But Nathaniel didn't break. He wasn't the type to surrender. Humiliation forged his rage into a dark, polished weapon. He devoured the news daily. On CNN, Eva Hart, bruise fading, held her newborn daughter at a foundation event. The New York Times praised her as the woman who turned pain into a fortress of justice. Times cover showed Eva's fierce eyes, captioned, "The Phoenix Rises." Each word was a knife to his pride. He threw a magazine to the floor, only to pick it up, reading every line like an addict torturing himself. By day, he wandered Wall Street, but no one welcomed him. Bars that reserved tables for him now shut their doors. Former colleagues averted their eyes, fearing his failure was contagious. At night, he returned to his moldy apartment, drank cheap liquor, and scoured financial news for traces of Eva's foundation. He saw its money flowing like blood through the city, and where there was blood, there was a way to poison it. Nathaniel scribbled plans on scraps of paper. Jagged lines connected names: a Chicago donor, an Albany politician, a secondary banker in Jersey. He knew he couldn't fight Eva legally, the Aegis Clause had him bound. But the foundation was a newborn machine, and every new machine had weaknesses. One night, he called an old contact, Adrian Cole, the PR guru who'd crafted philanthropist Mercer. Adrian answered warily. "Nathaniel, I thought you vanished." Nathaniel laughed dryly. "Vanished? I'm preparing. You owe me, Adrian. I made you. Now I need a favor." Silence stretched, then a heavy sigh. Not agreement, not refusal, just enough for Nathaniel to know the hook was set. In the following weeks, he met secretly in Chinatown cafes and run-down Brooklyn Italian joints. He gathered scraps: a foundation donor tied to a tax scandal, a board member's brother under drug investigation, a Bronx shelter project stalled by community backlash. Under Nathaniel's hands, these fragments became pieces of a strategy. He didn't need guns or legal power. He needed doubt. Plant it deep enough, and even a fortress could crumble. One rainy evening, Nathaniel stood under a flickering street lamp, peering through a restaurant window where Eva dined with Rowan Hale and donors. She smiled, confident, hair falling softly, eyes alight with new strength. Nathaniel's body burned, not with jealousy but with shredded pride. He whispered to himself, "The game's not over, Eva. You won a battle, but the war's just begun." Rain streaked the glass, blurring the scene inside. Nathaniel turned, melting into New York's darkness. In his burning eyes, the spark of a man who refused to be buried flickered back to life. He had nothing left to lose, and that was his deadliest weapon. New York's winter descended with a biting chill, winds slicing through endless avenues. The Brooklyn brownstone, Hart Hale Foundation's headquarters, glowed nightly like a lighthouse in thick fog. But even lighthouses waver when storms strike unexpectedly. Eva Hart sensed it before evidence appeared. A strange silence crept into donor calls. Hesitation replaced firm handshakes. Emails still came, but they grew colder, filled with questions instead of encouragement. The press, once the foundation's champion, shifted tone. A financial paper questioned, "Is Hart Hale Foundation truly transparent?" The article cited anonymous sources claiming a major donor used the foundation to whitewash a tax scandal. A late-night talk show sneered, "From Fortress of Justice to Castle of Illusions?" The questions didn't need hard proof, just seeds of doubt. And in a scandal-hungry public, those seeds took root fast. Eva read each line, fingers clenched white. She recognized Nathaniel's hand in it all. Only he understood how to weaponize public perception, how to twist media into a blade. Rowan Hale entered her office, a stack of papers in hand, face grim. "This isn't random. Someone's paving a road to break trust." Eva nodded, eyes fixed on the falling snow outside, white flakes melting on the glass. Her fortress wasn't being stormed with cannons but cracked from every angle. Trouble wasn't just in the press. A Bronx shelter project was halted for construction safety concerns. A Chicago donor paused funding, citing transparency reviews. Foundation lawyers scrambled to answer sudden audits. It felt orchestrated. Eva stared at her packed schedule, red notes bleeding across it, knowing Nathaniel had launched his counterattack. Late at night, alone in her office, the desk lamp illuminated her tired face. Her infant daughter slept nearby, her steady breaths a reminder of why Eva couldn't retreat. She recalled the Whitby night, when Nathaniel fell before evidence and law. She'd thought it was over, but wars with men like Nathaniel never ended. He didn't need legal power anymore, just chaos. In a seedy Queens bar, Nathaniel watched the news, a cold smile on his lips. Hart Hale Foundation faces transparency questions. Cassie Vale sat nearby, still striking but eyes weary, whispering, "You really think you can break her? The city's behind her." Nathaniel's gaze burned. The city loves legends, Cassie, but it also loves watching them fall. I just need a nudge. Cassie fell silent, fear creeping in. She'd seen Nathaniel at his peak and now in his depths, but the obsession in his eyes was more dangerous than any power. Back in Brooklyn, Eva walked the foundation's hallway after a long day. Children's drawings from victims hung on the walls, hopeful scribbles in bright colors. She paused at one, a red-roofed house, blue sky, a mother holding her daughter's hand. Her heart softened, but resolve surged. If Nathaniel wanted to turn light to darkness, she'd keep the flame alive not just with law, but with unassailable truth. That night, as snow fell heavily, Eva began drafting a new speech, not for the press or donors, but for the American public. A vow that Hart Hale Foundation wouldn't just weather rumors, it would turn them into fuel to stand stronger. She knew the storm wasn't over, but she also knew this wasn't just a fight between two people anymore. It was a battle between justice and darkness, between true legacy and a rotting ego. New York's sky was leaden, heavy clouds cloaking the city like a thick curtain. Outside Hart Hale Foundation's Brooklyn headquarters, dozens of reporters gathered, cameras in rows, microphones raised, red lights blinking. Weeks of rumors had turned the brownstone into a news magnet. Headlines swirled. Financial scandal? Foundation cover-up? Who is Eva Hart really? The public craved a fall, as if Eva's brilliance demanded a shadow. Inside, the brownstone's halls echoed with hurried footsteps. Rowan Hale walked beside Eva, face taut. "You don't have to do this, Eva. We can issue a statement. Wait out the storm." Eva shook her head, eyes forward. "Storms only pass if you face them. If I stay silent, they'll write my story for me. I need to tell it myself." Her voice was calm, but her hand gripped her coat, drawing strength from the child sleeping upstairs. The main door opened. A barrage of flashes hit her, voices shouting, "Eva, is the foundation a front for donors? What's your response to transparency allegations? Is this just a cover for revenge on Mercer?" Eva stepped onto the wooden podium at the brownstone steps, her gaze unflinching, dressed in a simple wool dress. No jewelry, no glamour, just a woman, radiating quiet strength. She began, voice clear and steady. "For weeks, rumors and accusations have swirled about Hart Hale Foundation. They say we're not transparent. They say we're controlled by shadowy forces. They say I'm a vengeful woman, not a builder. Today, I'm not here to deny. I'm here to prove." The crowd fell silent for a moment. Eva gestured. Staff brought out thick folders, stacked neatly on a side podium. "These are our full financial reports, independently audited. Every expenditure, every donation, publicly available on our website starting today. Not one number hidden, not one invoice obscured. If you doubt, read. Truth doesn't need lawyers to defend it, it stands on its own." Her words rang like a hammer, slicing through the fog of ambiguity. A reporter shouted, "Aren't you afraid? Exposing everything like this gives your enemies more weapons." Eva looked straight into the camera, eyes blazing. "I'm not afraid of the truth. I'm only afraid of silence." Keyboards clacked furiously. Cameras zoomed. Photos of Eva with the folders spread across social media. The hashtag number Truth Not Fear trending within hours. Americans, weary of elite cover-ups and lies, found something rare in Eva: raw transparency. That night, networks replayed her speech. A CNN anchor closed with, "Love or hate Eva Hart. Today she did what few in power dare. Laid everything bare. Trust, once wavering, began to return, slowly but surely. Donors reaffirmed support. Activists sent thanks. The foundation, instead of crumbling, became a symbol of transparency. But in a dim Queen's bar, Nathaniel Mercer watched the broadcast, face contorted, his glass shattered in his grip. Eva hadn't just survived the storm, she'd turned it into a springboard. Cassie Vale, sitting a few tables away, watched with pity and fear. Nathaniel muttered, voice hoarse, "Fine. If the public won't turn on her, I'll find another way. Every fortress has a back gate." In Brooklyn, Eva sat by her office window late at night. Streetlights glowed below. Her new plans spread across the desk, expanding legal programs, building shelters in Bronx and Harlem, launching a national hotline. She knew the foundation was never a safe victory. It was a battlefield. But hearing her daughter's steady breathing from the nursery, Eva smiled wearily. She'd walked through the storm, and most importantly, she'd chosen to stand in it, not bow. Rain pounded the tin roof of a Queens neighborhood, a steady drumbeat like war. In his dilapidated apartment, Nathaniel Mercer sat at a worn wooden table, a yellow lamp casting long shadows. Scattered before him were dozens of papers, blurry printed photos, stolen personnel files, and a Brooklyn map marked red at the foundation's address. His media smear campaign had failed. Eva didn't just endure, she turned the storm into new glory. The public rallied behind her, trusted her. Nathaniel knew he couldn't fight with truth or public opinion. To topple Eva, he'd strike her most vulnerable spot, her personal life, her safety, the peace she fought to protect. He hired a shady ex-paparazzo turned private operator. The man delivered photos, Eva pushing a stroller through Central Park, Rowan Hale beside her, occasionally smiling at the child. Others showed a nurse entering and leaving Eva's temporary apartment near the foundation. Nathaniel studied them with cold eyes. "I want more," he said, voice low and rough. "Not just photos. Every schedule, every move, every person in and out. And I want rumors leaked to the right places." Days later, social media buzzed with malicious questions. Who's the real father of her child? Is Rowan Hale just a mentor, or more? Anonymous accounts spread a photo of Rowan holding the baby, smiling, spinning a twisted tale that Eva lied, that the foundation was a stage for a shady affair. Baseless rumors, but they spread like wildfire, staining her pristine image. Eva sensed it one morning outside the brownstone. A reporter rushed her, microphone thrust forward. "Eva, is Rowan Hale the real father of your child?" Flashes erupted. Eva froze, heart aching not for the question, but because it targeted her most sacred bond, her daughter. Rowan stepped in front, deflecting the reporter, but his pained look told Eva the war had sunk to a darker, crueler level. In the foundation office, she sat, face pale. Rowan placed a hand on her shoulder, voice calm. "Don't let them drag you into the mud. I've seen hundreds of these cases. When they can't hit your work, they hit your family. But Eva, you're stronger. Let truth shield you." Eva nodded, but a vague dread spread. She knew Nathaniel, and she knew he wouldn't stop at rumors. He'd go further. Late at night, Eva's temporary apartment glowed with warm light. Her daughter slept in her crib, tiny breaths steady, small fingers twitching. Eva sat beside, eyes fixed on her, heart roiling. Every rumor, every paparazzi flash, didn't scare her for herself. But they could ruin her child's future, taint her life with public shame. Eva clenched her fists, vowing in the dark, "No one touches you. No one." In Queens, Nathaniel got more from the paparazzo, a young foundation employee, drowning in debt, ready to be an insider for cash. A weak link emerged. Nathaniel leaned forward, the yellow lamp illuminating his twisted smile. He didn't need guns or law. He needed chaos from within. The next day, a doctored foundation report surfaced online, showing shady shelter project expenses. The press pounced. How transparent is the foundation really? The public roared, fueled by evidence that looked real. Eva knew instantly there was a traitor, but the damage was done. A donor halted funding, citing further review. In the foundation's meeting room, tension hung like a taut string. Board members debated, voices growing impatient. Eva sat silent, scanning faces, knowing Nathaniel had struck precisely. Without appearing, he'd sown cracks in her fortress. After the meeting, Eva returned to her office. She stood by the window, the city blazing outside, but her heart darkened. The Met Gala slap had awakened her as a strategist. Now, the knives of rumor aimed at her motherhood, and Eva knew this battle wasn't just for the Foundation's fate, but for her daughter's future. New York's spring sun shone bright, the sky clear after months of gray. But in the city's heart, another storm brewed. The media buzzed with news. A leaked dossier accused Hart Hale Foundation of embezzling millions. Tabloids called it Eva Hart's final scandal. The forged evidence was so convincing that even some donors hesitated. Eva knew Nathaniel was behind it. After the insider was exposed, he abandoned spies for a lethal blow, a near-perfect dossier to ignite a public firestorm. Rowan Hale placed the dossier before Eva, voice low. "If we only defend, we'll lose. You need to go public, again." Days later, a packed city hall hosted hundreds of reporters. Cameras lined the room. The silence was heavy, like a storm about to break. Eva stepped to the podium in a simple white suit, no jewelry, no flair. She began, voice steady. "I'm used to rumors, but this time, I'm not just responding. I'm providing proof." The screen behind lit up, displaying audits from 3 independent international firms. Numbers flashed, debunking the leaked dossier. Discrepancies laid bare the lies. The hall buzzed, microphones thrust forward. Eva continued. "Whoever spread this dossier knew trust is fragile, but transparency is our weapon. I'm not just releasing documents. I'm requesting an FBI investigation into this forgery, and I believe we'll find its source." In the hall's shadows, Nathaniel Mercer watched, cloaked in a dark coat, eyes bloodshot. He hadn't expected Eva to counter so swiftly. He'd hoped panic would linger for weeks, toppling the Foundation. But now, she didn't defend. She turned the storm into a public weapon. The press's skeptical eyes turned curious. Who could craft such a sophisticated fake? The next day, an official investigation launched. Digital trails led to Nathaniel's Queen's hideout. The press exploded. Mercer strikes back with lies. Paparazzi swarmed his rundown building, snapping photos as FBI agents escorted him out, hands cuffed. The image of the former Titan, head bowed, spread across front pages. Cassie Vale vanished from the city, abandoning Nathaniel like a shadow fleeing ruin. Eva watched the news from her Foundation office. No gloating, no cheers, just deep relief. This battle wasn't about her and Nathaniel anymore. It was a symbol: manipulation, arrogance, and lies falling before transparent light. A month later, Hart Hale Foundation opened a new Harlem shelter. The red brick building was simple, but in its yard, children played, women laughed, their eyes sparkling with newfound safety. Eva held her daughter, standing on the steps, watching those faces. Spring breeze tousled her hair. In that moment, she knew. True legacy wasn't in defeating Nathaniel. It was in every smile, every life saved. Rowan Hale approached, touching her shoulder. "You turned a personal war into shared hope. Few can do that." Eva nodded, eyes on her daughter. "This is the kingdom I want to build." In a cold cell, Nathaniel Mercer sat silently, dim light on his haggard face. No flashbulbs, no fine whiskey, no glass castles. Only the clang of an iron door and darkness swallowing him whole. The arrogance that built his empire had become his final shackle. Above New York, skyscrapers gleamed in the sunset. Eva Hart's story spread, not as a scandal but as an epic of resilience. People whispered her name not as a victim, but as a strategist, a mother, a lighthouse in the storm. New York glowed in a new dawn. Eva Hart's story didn't end with newsroom applause or magazine covers, but with the quiet smiles of children in a newly built shelter. Nathaniel Mercer had fallen, but the darkness he represented lingered in society. Manipulation, arrogance, and violence, cloaked in power. What made Eva iconic wasn't her victory over one man, but her choice to turn personal pain into a shared legacy. And perhaps the true message of this journey is, justice doesn't come from courts or laws alone, but from the courage to refuse silence. Every woman, every child sheltered by the Foundation, is proof. What do you think? Did Eva find justice, or did she go too far in her fight? Leave a comment below. If this story touched a corner of your heart, share it to inspire others. And don't forget to follow, because this journey isn't over. Stories of resilience are still waiting to be told.